Rebel Devs Podcast, a show that challenges conventional thinking in the tech industry. Each episode features conversations with solutionists who have taken unconventional approaches to problem solving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their respective fields. Join the devolution.
Hello again, folks. This is your host, Vince Wood of the Rebel Devs Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Tom May. How's it going, Tom?
It's going.
That's all he's got. Well, not to be outdone is his iterative improvement, Jonah May. How's it going, Jonah?
It's going much better than Tom, apparently.
N+1 improved after the second time. We're not alone, guys. There's this bearded guy in the room here with us. Anybody know who this is?
Yeah, he lurks around in scouting circles and construction circles. He's the guy that you love to see and sometimes run in fear. This is our good friend James Glass joining the podcast.
Good evening.
So, James, do you have any idea what this is and what we're doing here? Should I give you a little bit of heads up and maybe feed in our leaders as well, our listeners as well?
I would. Please do so.
All right. So the Rebel Devs Podcast, as you heard during the intro, is just us sitting around and talking to people who have taken IT and some involvement or maybe something that's not IT and just come up with a new way to solve a problem, something that's maybe thought just a little bit off in left field, or the application of something that maybe others might not think to do. That's the whole premise behind Rebel Devs. Of course, we're talking development and IT work, and there's a certain conference coming up that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But that's the general principle. So for our listeners, that many of them know who Jonah and Tom are, do you want to give a little bit of introduction or intro into who is James Glass?
You talking to me?
You are James, right?
Yeah, my name is James Glass. I'm a construction superintendent for a large construction company in the United States. I do large commercial projects over $100 million, and I've got 40 years of experience. I started as a carpenter and worked my way up and learned a lot as I came along the way. A lot I applied from scouting with a focus here in the last few years, on critical facilities, data centers, hospitals, things like that. And which, while I'm not an IT guy, I have to understand a lot about IT in order to build the facilities that they use.
Yeah, there's a lot of consideration that goes into what does an IT X need. And I'm sure you've probably come across a request or two that was just a little bit different and required some different thinking. But we'll dive into that here shortly. But thanks for joining us, James. We're glad to have you.
Good, glad to be here.
So Tom, Jonah, there's we mentioned there's a conference coming up. I think y'all are getting ready to fly out to. By the time this airs, I think some of you will be there and maybe run into you while they're there. We're, of course, talking about VeeamOn, the annual data protection conference to be at if you are in that kind of space. What are y'all's thoughts about VeeamOn 2023? Is there anything that's you just want to specifically jump to that you're looking forward to? What you thinking?
Well, I'm looking forward to going back to Miami. We went to Vegas last year for the conference, and I think the world opened up. And having had a data center in Vegas 3 to 4 times a year, you can only Vegas so much. But I love the Fontainebleau. So I'm telling everybody, if you've not been to a VeeamOn at the Fontainebleau, you need to go. Part of it is, get geeking up a little bit. Those of us that love the James Bond movies, I might have mentioned this last time, but that famous pool scene with Goldfinger is shot at the Fontainebleau, and it's been renovated by now, but it's so cool to just be like James Bond was here. So I enjoy that. I'm sure there's a much more proper way of I'm looking forward to meeting all of our customers looking forward to looking at some of the exhibits and demos. And I know there's some big announcements coming at VeeamOn. Some we can mention, some we can't. But I'll throw that over to my cohort, Jonah, because maybe he's excited more about Veeam things, where I'm like all about the pool, apparently.
Jonah, what do you think?
I think, number one, take what he just said, hear it for 2 or 3 years straight, and now you can imagine how excited I am to finally experience a VeeamOn in Miami. But there are definitely some good sessions I'm looking forward to, such as, I think I mentioned it on the last episode, Maurice and Joe's A to Z automation journey, which I think is over 100 signups right now. And there's designing Microsoft 365 backup for scale, which I think is the number one session right now, hosted by a couple other Vanguards at close to 300 signups.
Are you going to get in for Labwars this year, Jonah?
Oh, of course. You have to do Labwars if you're there.
I've never done Labwars. I've always sat and watched from a distance and thought I don't need to be humiliated, because to me it's not about winning. It's just about beating the people I know, and they always score so high. I would just never live it down if you beat me by 1 point. It'd just be a year of humiliation.
Not competitive at all.
No, it's more the trash talking behind things. It's the just being beaten down for a year. So it's not about winning. It's just about not losing. What is it? Hey, let's take it back to scouting, right, James? What do they say about a bear? Do you have to be the fastest?
No, yeah, I don't have to outrun the bear. I have to outrun you.
That's right. See, it's all about scouting in there. And God willing, this year maybe I'll win some sneakers. So I've been snubbed the past couple of years. So if any Veeam people are listening, get me some sneakers already. I need some Veeam kicks so I can be cool. It looks like they might be Vans this year.
I can get some shoes and spray paint them green for you if you want.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'll share a fun VeeamOn story that I loved. They brought in this industry expert in efficiency, and they were very comedic and whatnot. And she was presenting on stage and telling us all how amazingly organized she was. And she flashed her iPhone by accident up there, and it was like the little badge that says your unread messages. I swear to you, it was like 6,380. And the whole audience was like, oh, and she was like, I promise you it's better than what it was. And I was like, oh, I hope they edit that out. So poor person, but I thought it was hilarious.
You know, I've heard of people like that, but I didn't know they let them out in public.
Yeah. Oh, it's gross. At least turn the badge off, right? Like, just don't even admit it after a certain level. As we look through, some people are doing VMCA and VMCE training out there. One of our friends is actually taking that class out there, so that'll be fun. I'm looking through the sessions here, and I think what I like most about the sessions are a little bit more of lessons from the field. I don't so much enjoy the what should you do, but I know there's like a session of 7 common misconfigurations. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know till you don't know it. And so some of these guys will help you prevent that and say, this is when you probably shouldn't do this. So there you go. Go ahead and look online. There is a virtual component to it. It won't be as awesome as those of us in Florida. To give you an idea, I'm going to try to be hip and cool, but last time we had Flo Rida in front of the pool. See, so I didn't even say it right. It's like Flo Rida, I think. So he actually
Bring that up.
right there by the pool. Oh, he's the spin you right round guy he did some of the songs from The Hangover and whatnot. So I was like, oh wow. And then I was like, interesting demographic here. There's like 12 people really into it and a whole bunch of people staring, because we get a lot of people from overseas, from South America and Europe and whatnot, and they probably had no idea who this guy is. And I'll bet you some marketing guru was like, well, if you put his name together, it's Florida, and we'll have Flo Rida in Florida. And I was like, look at you wacky marketing people. So it's kind of like when Elton John plays the Harley Owners Group. You're just like, who chose this? So I'm picking on Veeam, and the marketing people have just cut my budget now. So I will get away from there on a negative sense, but go be there. We can probably get you a discount code too.
I was just waiting for a chance to bring up the fact that I think Tom's Labwars is called Real Life, is called business daily. I think that is his Labwars. Jonah, do you have any ideas about what Labwars is going to be this year based on previous year's participation?
Last year it had to do with hardened Linux repositories, which were relatively new at the time. So this year might be something object storage related, if I had to guess. But we won't find out typically until we're there, of course.
What do you think about CDP? You think they're going to go CDP with it?
They
Because
could.
that's relatively new.
They could. I mean, they didn't do it last year, and they did expand support with it in version 12.
We'll see. But I want to talk scouting. If we could jump over to scouting, you think? Any chance?
Well, we'll circle back to this Veeam stuff. What you got, Tom?
I'm just thinking, we got James here. James and I have probably known each other for, 15 years now, I think, in scouting.
Yes.
That's how we met. And I think we have come together to be best friends in this all. And as we started talking about podcasts, I thought, I want to start bringing some scouting friends in, because I think over the years, if we've dealt with different youth, we've seen an impact of scouting on adults. And James and I, in our different careers, we've kind of been shocked a little bit of the things that adults learn in scouting and they apply to their careers. And from my standpoint, the more I look at it, I think maybe it's because I was a scout growing up that it was in there. And I thought, let's bring James on. And he's done some really cool projects. He's been in the trenches with me in scouts forever. And I thought, let's just kind of talk about some of those Baden-Powellisms and crazy things and just tie it on back. So maybe some people are like, we're tired of the tech. Let's talk a little bit about scouts. So, I mean, I don't know where to start. You want to start, James? You want me to start? Jonah, you want to start? Like, who's got something?
Well,
to
a
pontificate?
little bit about what you already said. I think one, because of our personalities, but again, that might be driven by we were both came up through scouting since we were kids, and I had a little bit more of a leadership training when I was in the Army, and I think tying it back to what adults learn in scouting, I'm a little bit amazed even today of how much adults do learn, because I'm surprised. I'm in an industry that we have to do these leadership things in order for us to be successful. Even the least successful person in the construction business has to do somewhat of the leadership things that are echoed throughout scouting. And I'm always a little bit amazed about how other industries and other careers don't do that every day. And I think it's good that the adults learn. We teach as many adults about leadership and the principles that Baden-Powell laid down years ago. We teach as many adults as we do youth to it. So, I mean, it not only benefits adults, youth, but it benefits adults. And you actually never get tired of actually teaching it, because it's always amazing, especially in the youth, when you see the light come on and they suddenly get it. So, that makes it all worth rewarding, because, it's not like a construction project where my end goal is to complete the project on time, in budget, and in good quality. Our goal is to produce good leaders and good adults later in life. And when you see that light come on, it's kind of that reward of seeing it, rather than, because, they go on to be adults and you don't necessarily ever see them again. So a little bit of expanded on what you said there.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. I look at some of the advanced leadership trainings we go through. As adults, we go through Wood Badge. Youth go through NYLT or NAYLE. Jonah has a unique perspective, I think, of having gone through both the youth side leadership programs and then adults. So what do you see, Jonah?
I see where a lot of skills at both levels really cross over. I mean, being in product management, I see where, we're bringing a new product to market, offering support for it, and we are writing up business cases, almost like an Eagle project plan. We are coming up with budgets and timelines for various phases of early access, eventually into a roadmap to general availability. And even just in day-to-day conversations, I find where a lot of it relates. Like, a good example is actually this morning I was helping Veeam host their weekly community recap, because one of their regular hosts is out of town for the week at a conference, and they asked for some people to fill in. And we found ourselves discussing a post someone had made on the hub that ended up tying back to just kind of a lot of things we discuss and teach the scouts over the years. Like we lightly touched on kind of the 5 motivational factors because it was a topic about ego and pride, or how you should have a lack thereof in IT and going with an open mind. And we heavily discussed assuming positive intent, which is probably one of the things we drill into the scouts the most in the program is, don't assume someone's out to get you or being malicious. Assume that there's been a miscommunication and they want to do the right thing.
You read my playbook, the 5 motivational factors. I mean, little things like that. I remember going to good old college for that. And in business management, they were talking about the motivations of employees. And something that I felt I was ahead of the curve was when we started delving into it from scouting. So often we think, well, if we throw enough money at somebody, like I've had people work for me that were working crazy hours and they're just exhausted, and a lot of times management's like, well, just give them more money to do it. And the people that would work for me would be like, that's so awesome. And I'm like, well, after a certain while, it doesn't matter how much they pay you, you're just going to burn out and not care. And it really goes back to those 5 motivational factors. So we cover this in Scouts, right? Fear, peer pressure, pride, recognition, money. I think we spin it a little bit to a little more youth terms in there. But at the end of the day, it's, some people love that paycheck. Some people love to be on that team. And I go back to Baden Powell. He determined that with awards, right? We have awards for youth, but he realized adults want to have awards as well. We want recognition. So as we look through in pride and recognition, we don't necessarily get paid, but we get to put all those knots on our uniforms. We get those special neckerchiefs. And you think it's for the youth. It's not for the youth. When I was in the 6th grade and became a Boy Scout, I was so excited to put my tan shirt on. I'd wear it to school one day a week and just be stoked about it. As an adult, I get excited all dressed up, looking sharp, and like look at all my regalia and everything, and secretly scoffing at those that don't have, So that was pretty big for me. So I think that Baden Powellism helped me. And how do I motivate people? How do I motivate those employees? So, Jonah, I like the 5 motivational factors. Did you learn any of that? I mean, you're the newest out of school. Did you learn any of that in school, or was it all just Scout related?
It was all on the Scout side. And, bringing it back even more kind of into the IT thing, I mean, look at some of it in the industry, right? I mean, you want to talk recognition or pride, look at all the community programs, the V100, Microsoft MVPs, V-Experts. Or, for example, you mentioned the shoes at VeeamOn. Well, how do you become eligible to get the shoes? You attend VeeamOn.
Well, I'm going to say that the Vanguard program is highly unique and not pride driven or anything like that. As 2 of us are members of it, I think it really is just the excellence of the character and contributions to the community. Whereas, those Microsoft MVPs or, VMware guys, I'm sure theirs is just pride. But, I think we're a rare breed by all day long. James, what about you with motivational factors? You've got scouting, you have military, you have a career in managing. Scout help you with managing other people? Have you seen things you've learned in the scouting world apply back to those other worlds, or vice versa?
Yeah, every day. It's the same. No matter what you're doing, leadership's the same. And trying to motivate somebody and try to have a highly successful team it's all done the same way. In the construction business, we use a lot of lean principles and a system called Last Planner, but they're the same things that we learned in scouting. And of course, Last Planner and lean mainly started with Toyota in Japan after World War II in production and manufacturing, and leaning up that and making it more productive and cost-efficient process. Well, we've taken those and applied it to the construction business too. But every time we're going through teaching the class to a new set of trade partners or new people on each project, I always going like, well, we do this in scouting. I don't use the Last Planner terms because I use a lot of Japanese-based words, which is fine. But I'm going like, well, we do the exact same thing in scouting. So it's nice to see that the things I learned as a youth and then applied as my career as I came up as an adult in scouting are vindicated or reinforced by another system from another direction that all has the same thing at the end. It's about leadership and relationships. And if you don't have that relationship with your construction crews, you're not going to get where you want to go. If you don't have that relationship with the youth in scouting, they are not going to achieve where they need to achieve to grow to be successful scouts, and also hopefully one day a shout out to our Eagle Scout here, become an Eagle Scout, and then take and apply all that to their lives as they go on down the road and live their lives, and then take the information they've learned and spread it to the next generation or to other people at work. I've come across my career in the construction business and some in other businesses that when somebody says they're a scout, not only I but other people go, "Oh, well, you probably know this already," and people recognize that scouts know how to do this, and it's a because it's a successful program that does produce and get to where we want to go. People around the world recognize it. So it is, good motivation to see that. It's when I'm talking to other people in the construction business and we're talking about it, I say, well, I do this in scouting. I don't tell the scout how to solve the problem. We lead them to how to solve the problem. And it's the same thing in the construction business. So, they echo each other. It's pretty neat.
Well, I'm going to make comment about our Eagle Scout that you called him out, and our Eagle Scout on an audio podcast waved at us all. So I think he fired a shot across my bow earlier, so I'm firing it back across his, waving on an audio podcast. But in all fairness, I've done the same silly things, and I think maybe we should kind of just recap a little bit about the beginning of scouting. Maybe some of our listeners aren't just the uber scouters as we are, and so this gentleman named Lord Baden-Powell started as a military officer in the mid 1800s to late 1800s, and he became a British war hero. Part of his military service was actually scouting, as in not Boy Scouting as we think about it today, or Scouts BSA, but really working, going behind enemy lines, reconnaissance, spying, and many times he was seen as being under siege and greatly outnumbered. Something along the lines, I want to say something like 5,000 grown men soldiers surrounding a village where Baden-Powell with his small band of scouts were trapped there, and they were much younger. And so he actually defeated these sieges and became a major war hero. When he came back from war, he realized there was this gap in skills between young men and military service, and he wanted to start a program that would fill some of those gaps. Being that he had expertise with younger people, that helped as well. And so the scouting movement was born, and it's matured well over 100 plus years. So that's kind of our basis as we think about all things scouting, as we start looking, as we learn different methods to the madness. And what I really love most is, somebody told me this a long time ago, it was kind of around the skills we learn in scouting, and people don't understand it. So one of the things that we do in scouting is we teach skills to young people in areas that they normally wouldn't have it. For example, the average person doesn't really have a deep understanding of knots. We really don't see young men and girls come into the program and understand how to tie 47 different knots, their applications and whatnot. So what we do is we teach them how to tie these knots. So there's a learning dynamic, but then we enable them to be able to teach those skills. It cements it a little bit more, but it builds them as instructors and subject matter experts. If we chose a regular skill that somebody knows, let's say using a computer, some of these people would come in and already have that skill set at different levels. So this kind of levels the playing field. Our whole goal in scouting is not to necessarily have an expert in knots, but an expert in the methods of teaching. So, Jonah, I will throw this back over to you. We often talk about EDGE in scouting, right? Educate, demonstrate, guide, enable. EDGE. But you worked somewhere that used a derivative of it, and then we saw it come back in the IT world. So why don't you share about your EDGE experience in the working world?
So many, many moons ago, in my days before IT, I was a lowly barista at Starbucks.
Lowly.
And
Wait. Any baristas out there listening, we love you. Don't mess with our coffees. If you're going to do that, that was Jonah May as quoted of taking down the barista world. But Yeah. Okay, Jonah. So now my coffee is safe and protected. You can go on about your lowly barista days.
I don't even remember the exact acronym anymore, but had to go through about a 1 or 2 afternoon training course at one point to become a barista trainer. And a heavy focus on it was an acronym they used. It was 3 P's and a C. Again, I don't remember what they all stand for, but basically looking at it, it was like, wow, this is the EDGE method. And it stuck to me to that point that, again, years later, I don't remember the Starbucks acronym, but I do remember the EDGE method because they were so similar.
Well, and I remember we hired a barista in to learn how to rack and stack servers. He was a computer science major. It's not Jonah. But they worked together. They went to school together. And I remember looking at this guy, and he's learning how to stack servers and program them and even do some basic Veeam functions, building out the, VBR consoles and whatnot. And I looked at him and I was like, wait, you worked at Starbucks. I don't remember this whole system, but we're going to go with EDGE. And then Jonah walked by and said, what, 3 P's and a C or what was it?
3 P's and a C.
Okay, so the guy looked at me. He's like, "Oh, I get it." And the whole premise here was we were giving them the knowledge. So educate. We don't expect you to grab it all. We're educating it. After we give them the knowledge transfer, we demonstrate it. Okay, this is how I want you to do it. And then we would guide them as they go through it. We would just kind of tweak a little bit. And then ultimately we would enable them. And my hope in the enablement was, now that you know how to do it and you're the guy who's doing it, work on that continuous process improvement, which is another scouting and real world thing. But James, construction, EDGE methods. I mean, is that how you learn carpentry? Like, I get there's schools for it, but I don't think a lot of people go through formal carpenter school, do they? I mean, how do you learn that trade?
Well, yes and no. Depends on which segment of the industry you go into. Commercial does tend to have some form of training, either through the Carpenters Union or the ABC has apprenticeship programs as well. But no matter where you're learning your information on carpentry, either through apprenticeship school or whatever, most of it you learn on the job, OJT. You only get familiarization and learn things in class, but it's actually doing it on the job is where you actually learn how to do it and gain that experience. But construction business, it's not quite called EDGE. We call PDCA, plan, do, check, and adjust. We already have some basis of if you're there on the scene, you already have been educated to some extent. You're just gaining more education as you go, which is part of the do, check, and adjust program. Well, I didn't quite do that better, or next time I can do it better. Here's what I can do to do it better. So that's the education process, or you're having somebody mentor you through it. So we have the same concept, just probably different acronyms, but most of it's learned through the same thing, educating, like you're talking about the knots. We teach you the knots, and we teach you how to do the knots. We teach you how to teach the knots. It's the same thing, because once you become a journeyman carpenter, you're actually responsible to teach the apprentices that are assigned to work with you. And everybody's got an apprentice, because you usually have some ratio of apprentices to journeymen. So your job is to teach them as you learned on the job the same way, because again, it's all OJT, most of it. So same concept, different acronyms, probably a little bit different process, but same exact concept.
Isn't it cool that in IT they always blame us for being too acronym heavy, and we're dropping things all over the world between scouting and construction? It's awesome. I'm watching show notes go in, and we're just kind of like, wait, what was that? Let's go back through. So, James, what was yours again? Just so, was it PDCA or was it what?
PDCA,
what was it?
plan, do, check, and adjust constantly. It's for problem solving. And talking about the acronyms, you think IT business is bad. I work for a company that publishes its own acronym page. It has so many acronyms. I mean, even more than the Army had. So you're not the
Oh,
only one
wow.
that does it. People drop an acronym, and I have to look at the sheet, go and see what they're talking about.
And then you get the jokers out there. They're like, and the ballast resistor to the flex capacitor,
Yep.
that was your problem. And it's great because Vince is shaking his head here because he knows people have done that. And then all of a sudden you walk by some department and someone's like, yeah, the flux capacitor was really going out of sequence. And you're just like, oh, look at somebody regurgitating information that they don't know.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I'll tell you, one of the ones that I learned in scouting that I had actually forgotten about from school was group formations. And that has been really interesting, taking scouting group formations to work, because I know early in my career we really had cemented teams. Usually, unless the guy in front of you died, you really weren't getting that promotion or movement. And I think in the last 10 years I've just seen reorg. And I think about scouting. So we learn about group formations, right? We have forming, storming, norming, performing. This is a big wood badge topic. I think, Jonah, is that on NYLT as
It
well?
is.
It is? Okay. So we learn this, and we start learning in the group dynamics. We come together. Things are pretty much going all right. We're getting to know everybody. And we go from, from forming into storming. We just go into low performance, just chaos mode, eating at each other, fighting, and then we kind of normalize and we can almost function as adults now. And then we start moving to performance. And behind it in scouting, we even have all the infographics about which is a high performing, low performing, and this whole kind of matrix. And I forgot in the working world, we actually go through that with our teams as well. And often as a manager, I've looked back and said, oh, look, this group is new. They're forming. They seem like they're working, but I know they're not going to perform yet. And so we start going through those. And that's been huge for me from a managerial state. I've almost taken it to human development, if you will, and looked at an employee and said, hey, this guy is new on the job. He's going to go through those 4 stages without his team. But back to scouting, what's so awesome is every 6 months we're taking a well-oiled machine, we're deliberately breaking it, and then thrusting it into a new group dynamic. And over the years, I just watch it and I see the youth go through it, and I watch anxious parents. And James, in your world, you're always dealing with those anxious parents about,
Yep.
is it working right or not? Like, what's your experience with that from scouting or from construction? I mean, how does group dynamics work for you in those worlds?
Well, in scouting, I'm the charter organization rep, which uh, so I do some hand holding. I'm unlike most charter organizations rep. I actually have a hands-on. I participate a lot in the troop activities and things like that. So I'm usually only get called in when there's a problem. So when we take and shake our well-oiled machine up, and then all of a sudden, goal-oriented, achieving parents are seeing things not going how they expect. They get quite anxious, and in order to allow for our now shook up machine to become again a well-oiled machine, part of my job is to kind of keep them out of the process. So I have to kind of coach them through. Hey, this is normal. We see it with every group. We see it with every youth as they come through. They're going to come through, and this is going to happen about this age. And from this age to this age, they're going to be doing this. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see the light come on about this age. And then all of a sudden, you're like, wow, the whole journey was worth it. So part of my part of the process is trying to keep those parents where they're relaxing and letting the process work, but also educating them too, because we do take our adults and put them in a patrol just like our youth and give them these same activities, this same duty roster, the same things when we go to summer camp and camp out. So they take care of themselves. They begin to understand through experience and living it of what their youth is actually going through. So one combination of trying to coach them through it and also them actually seeing it, the light for them begins to come on. The only difference really is they're a little bit faster with it because they're not having to deal with a teenage body growing and hormones and things like that, and normal teenager problems because they've already been through it. So they tend to learn a little bit faster. But once they see that, then they usually most times join right in with the rest of the troop leadership and start coaching those kids through it, and somebody else's child too, not necessarily their own. They became concerned about everybody, all the youth, achieving their goals and their ranks and the things that that they are trying to achieve through scouting. It's not just about their child anymore. So that's the good thing about the process when it finally goes through as adults. But again, every time we shake the machine up, we start over. And you would think, like in the construction business, like here we go again. Which sometimes it is, and it's a little bit more different goal oriented there because it's driven by budgets and costs and everything. But so you got to be a little bit more specific, and things are long term. But in scouting, you want to start the process over every time 6 months because if you don't, one, the group becomes stagnant, and the goals tend to fade and things like that. But if you start it over, you're always generating new blood into the unit. You're always educating new people. You're always bringing people along. That's the successful part of scouting. We do a lot of work behind the scenes, and sometimes it's not very fun, and sometimes it's not very you don't get thanked for it. But when you see those people get to where they get to go, and when see the youth achieve their goals and those lights coming on, I know I keep referring to the lights coming on, but when you see those things, it makes it all worthwhile. And you want to see other people do well because it's not about you. It's about the troop, and it's about the youth, and it's about the other individuals. Because when they're successful, we're all successful.
It's funny you say that because I look back and you say about the light going on. How many scouts over the years have we seen, like in the F-35 programs in the Air Force or different high-ticket service academy profiles, and they're doing all these high-level, dangerous jobs, and you're like, you fly F-35s. I remember when you would cry in the middle of the night in a tent or couldn't put it up, and you just look at them and you're like, wow, the light really did go on. And you'll talk to them, and I've spoken to more than one where you're like, what was it like going through ranger training? What was it like going through basic training? And more often than not, they're like, I don't know. It was just kind of like playing capture the flag with the scouts. We were hot, we were hungry, we did whatever, we adapted, we overcame, we just didn't freak out. Life was fine. And I'm always surprised at that because I've not been through those experiences, but apparently I'm subjecting youth to these experiences. So it's pretty interesting to see their lights go on as
Yes.
well.
Over the years, we've had several graduates of the Air Force Academy, the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, the Naval Academy, play football for the Air Force Academy, or people that didn't go to the academies but went to top tier colleges and now have a successful career as lawyers and business people and are giving back to the community, just being successful in life. And a lot of it all goes back to scouting. It's we don't know any astronauts, we don't know any presidents, but think about how many astronauts have Boy Scout and Eagle Scout in their resume. Same thing for president. And there was some adult leader just like us somewhere that helped them get through the program and got them on that journey to walking on the moon or flying the space shuttle, and to me that's one of the biggest things I can contribute to society, to try to make youth better adults and productive adults in life. And to me, that I don't need a knot. Yeah, we like knots and our awards, and I like that Eagle Mentor pin that I wear on my collar. But that's probably the most rewarding thing when you think of the long game and see where people end up.
I'm not sure that his mom is going to be listening, but we had a scout that you mentioned go to Air Force Academy. He played on the football team. It was the year of the national championship. And I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see pictures of this guy in the Oval Office with President Trump. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I text his mama and I'm like, do you know where your son is? And she's like, at school. I don't know. And we're like, you might want to check Facebook. And she was like, oh my gosh, you didn't even tell me he's in the Oval Office right now meeting the president. So while they grow up, while they're successful, it's fun to watch, but there's still that same kid getting lost in the woods sometimes. By all means.
And I can remember him standing there, me looking up at him because he's a big old boy, 15 years old, and trying to coach him through not being a bully, on camp out, and then look and see what he's done with his life,
Yeah, it's so amazing. Vince, are you going to keep us honest and make us do some of these cool little come back to Veeams and stuff, or are we going to keep rambling here for a bit?
Well, I was just listening to all the scouting related stuff and thinking about all the different ways and points, conversations that I've had specifically around IT related stuff that this all ties back to. First example that popped into my mind was the continuous education that you talked of, iterative improvement, continuous improvement, whatever phrase you want to use. That's been a topic of conversation around IT training in the last few years. It really should have been a continuous thing, but it's only come up as in the blogosphere, if you want to call it that, or podcast space, whatever. It's only been a topic of conversation recently when it probably should have been the whole time. Several things that James mentioned as far as scouting dynamics. I was sitting here thinking, I wonder how much better the IT industry would be if more IT pros were scouts. If more IT pros were, say, for example, used to the team shifting every 6 months. Because you mentioned stagnant, and I've seen IT teams that both I was part of and also that I was not part of, that I was just watching from afar, that just kind of lose their motivation. They just stop being productive. They stop moving the needle, so to speak, because they know each other's weaknesses and they just pick at each other instead of actually working together to accomplish a common goal. Or humans that are in a role and for whatever reason they're no longer in that role, and their self value, their self image was entirely wrapped up in that role, in that task, in that whatever. And when it changes, they're lost. They don't know what to do. And then the different acronyms you use for training and sharing knowledge. I think if more IT pros were familiar with those and understood that teaching someone something is not going to cost you your job, it's actually going to mean you can go take some time off and not have to worry about getting a phone call. Positive, all of this stuff. I think if more people knew it, I'd have a lot better coworkers. Let's put it that way.
I would
It's
agree.
funny.
Would something I told Tom today in an earlier conversation on the phone was we were talking about teaching again. I said, I teach Sunday school. In fact, I teach youth Sunday school now, but I've taught several classes over the years. I have learned more teaching than I ever did sitting in the class. And that's what people don't realize, I think. And I think if they saw that as a benefit, one, well, it's a little bit self-motivating, but two, I don't know a person that isn't pleased when they see whoever their student is, whatever the topic is, IT or whatever, when they learn something and get it and it goes on. The light comes on, like I said,
There's a certain someone that I listen to on a regular basis that uses the phrase, go out, kill it, drag it back home. Go be successful. To your point about, teach them something, make sure they understand it, coach them along. And as soon as the light comes on or, they really grasp that thing, whatever it may be, all of a sudden you watch and they've done it 2 and 3 times and now they've passed that knowledge on. And then the team has grown and the team is, moved up and right. For those of you familiar with the Magic Quadrant. This is a somewhat IT-centered podcast, and we do want to, keep to that. But I think there's a lot of value in what y'all are talking about, and we've been talking here for a little over 40 minutes. I've got a little bit more time. We've got some time left, but I don't want us to run too long.
I thought maybe some project management, and
that sounds.
So project management, and this is, I think, one of the biggest outputs of scouting. When you talk about an Eagle Scout, it really is kind of the doctoral level of scouting. Less than 4% make Eagle, and people don't realize it's really 4% of anybody that's ever put in an application. So we have such a high dropout rate from the younger Cub Scouts. There's so many of Arrow of Light winners out there, but that don't become Eagle Scouts. There's so many kids that try it for a year and they're gone. So out of like 2 million Eagle or registered scouters each year, less than 4% make it. But going through this journey, we start them young and teaching them project management. And I'm going to basically start with the lower levels. Jonah, I'll pitch it to you to kind of go over the Eagle book and whatnot. And maybe, James, you can tackle some in this and we'll move it into the kind of the adult world. But I know as a scoutmaster myself, we take them at a very young age and we start working on ranks, and we start going from the one and done, tie this knot, great, you did it, go home, come back, do it again, to, hey, we want you to go ahead and track physical fitness for 30 days. And then we take that and we look at improvements in there. And so we're teaching them to track something data driven for 30 days, set some goals, and go ahead and achieve that. And we do that for maybe a tenderfoot rank, a second class up to a first class. And we do little derivatives of this 30-day thing. It might come down to create a budget, and how does your budget go? What's your goal? Will you go ahead and raise money somehow? And we teach them how to do that. Well, eventually we start moving into these things called merit badges, which are more intense. And some of the ones I teach are, personal management. So I work with a scout and we talk about budgeting, living within your means, different ways to do this. And I think this is a skill not really often taught in schools, but I know we take it from that 30-day derivative and we move it to a 90-day derivative. And we're, hey, have a budget, work for 90 days, make sure that you have some feedback sessions in there to understand, am I hitting my goal? Am I benchmarking? I was going to raise $100. Well, I only made 75, but my budget was 125. Does this really work? And we teach them some of those money factors across 90 days. So we went from one and done's to 30 days to 90 days. Then we kind of accumulate that with your Eagle project. And Jonah, you've been through this. You've also are a summit recipient. Most of the listeners probably don't even know about summits. They're an even higher level than Eagle, very much rare. And it builds a similar project. So what does that Eagle project really look like when we go through? And James here is an Eagle coach, so he's probably going to chime in on the back of it. What does that look like from moving from that merit badge over to the book? And let's grow this on up, if you will, and take it back to IT.
So kind of like it was a natural progression from the earlier ranks to the merit badges, you kind of see the same thing with your Eagle Scout project. And it's really kind of broken up into 3 phases. It totals quite a bit. Like I can tell you, I've actually got my old project pulled up right here, and it's about a 44-page document. And I've seen ones easily twice that length. But kind of phase 1 is your preliminary plan. You come in, you just give a high-level overview of what you're looking at doing, what the project might entail, rough estimates, what are some of the materials and tools and timelines you might need, just so a committee of adults can kind of help you determine, is the project what they call Eagle-worthy? And James is a trained Eagle coach, so he can fill in some of the gaps on what exactly that means. But high level, it's kind of, does it demonstrate a proper amount of leadership, and is it a project that gives a lasting impact back to the community? Then once you get that approved, then you start going through some fundraising plans where you get approvals to raise your funds, and you actually have to build out this full final plan before you execute, in which the goal is, if you got sick or something happened to you and you couldn't make that event where you were supposed to be executing the project, you could hand your book to someone else who had zero knowledge of your project, and they would be able to read through it and execute the plan for you. And that is phase 2, as well as, the execution itself. Then phase 3, you come back and you actually do, it's called a project review. Really, in the IT world or the business world, we call it more of a post-mortem. You attach some pictures of what the final product looks like for your project. You discuss kind of, did you stay on budget? Did you stay on track with your timeline? What went to plan? What didn't go to plan? What are some things you wish you had considered when you had done the first plan of the project that you realize now, because hindsight's 2020. And by the end of it, you're looking usually at about a 6 to 12 month process going through this entire thing, with several meetings with a board of adults who are reading through your plans, not necessarily to pick it out and find all the flaws, but kind of just determine, are you meeting the mark?
So I would add to that, it's the project is really the vehicle. The goal is leadership. And again, you transition from the normal merit badge rank process into the Eagle process. You have to coach the candidate into, it's still about leadership, because it's easy just like in an IT project, I'm sure, just like in a construction project, it's easy to come wrapped around the axle about the project. You know, you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too close trying to plan the project. So it's about leadership. Yes, you want a successful project. Yes, you want all those things that Jonah said, but actually, there's not a requirement for the project to be successful to you obtain your eagle rank. However, you could have some highly unforeseen incident happen and you not be able to complete your project. But if you followed the process, did the leadership, wrote the after report, and showed where the problem was and got to it, you can still be awarded your eagle rank. So. It's a long process. It's a difficult process. It requires commitment on the candidate's part and people that are helping. But it is all his work or her work, and it's not the Eagle coach's job. The Eagle coach mentors, nudges, and directions, but they don't tell people what to do. It's all about that person. It's all the culmination of leadership you've learned through your scouting career is really what it is. And I would say it, tying it back to adult projects, it's the same process. It's a proven process that works, and if you follow the process, you're going to get to where you need to be successful. And do we have projects fail? I'm sure you do in IT. We do in construction business. No matter what we've done to try to prevent it, but if you've done everything within your power to prevent it and to be successful, have you really failed? Yeah, you didn't achieve the immediate future goal, but have you really failed in the process? So it's kind of the same thing with the Eagle project, and it's the same thing in any adult project, I would say too. It's about um, the journey. It's about you learning to trust your team. It's about having assuming everybody has positive intent. It's about managing around weaknesses. It's about playing to strong things. And it's, again, not about the individual. It's about the team and you getting on that journey and getting to where you need to be to fulfill your goal, you know.
I take it back to formalized change management in IT. Having been on change advisory boards and been approvers and whatnot, I have seen different techs come up, and they may be really senior techs, they could be really junior techs, but they really don't understand what has to happen in a change management process. So often we think, well, we need to put some new firewall rules in place. And so typically the engineer will be like, oh, I'm really smart. Let me put all my code in here. That's my change. And I'd go back and I'd kick the change order. I'd be like, no, 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 no. All right, you need to be a little bit further thinking, and we need to think about for every A option, there needs to be a B option. We need for every, project that we're trying to go, what's the worst things that could happen? We're going to plan for we're going to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Exactly like this whole Eagle project. So as we get these people moving through, say, a firewall change, we're like, documentation is the key. It must be written down. To what level? That somebody else could execute this if you weren't here. So if this firewall change is executing on a Thursday night and you get a really bad pizza and get sick, somebody else has to execute this. They should pick up your playbook and go. And there should be that backup person going. It's like in scouts, we say, what, plan A is we go, plan B is we go with rain gear. It's the same way with change management. So we build out this whole playbook and we go A to B, B to C. If C, go back to A, and we go through this whole thing, and then we learn no and go, no goes. At what time do I revert the change and go back? At what point do I plow forward? At what point do I test it? And you have to go through all this permutation and documentation. And that is what's so key. I think if we had more people that went through the Eagle Scout program that actually had a successful Eagle coach like yourself, James, that really put them through the grinder of asking questions about every permutation and what would you do if it's hot? What would you do if it's cold? How are people going to drink water? How will you make sure they drink water? If they get sick, will there be emergency facility? Where will the ambulance go? What's the closest hospital? Do you have everybody's medical card? And we translate that to the firewall rule. What if the rule doesn't take? How do you revert it out? Did you do a config backup first? Have you restored the config to ensure that it's good? Have you had a second peer review? And you go through this whole change board and then you get that approval. Well, it's like that Eagle Scout process. It's those change advisors being convinced, is it timely? Is it appropriate? Do they have a good plan? Now, this advisor on the change advisory board, the approver, they may not understand how a firewall rule works. I couldn't tell you the basic ACLs anymore. However, I do have enough sense from my project management to know, listen, if we're going to execute this at 9 and we need to be done by 11, we probably need to say rollback period at 10 o'clock. If you are not successful, we are rolling this back and walking away. And scouts following that Eagle book. And I've heard you do this time and time again with this. With scouts. So do you see that also, James, in your world with the project planning? If they followed that Eagle process, these projects would be better? Or?
Yes. My saying at work is, if you follow my company's process, you may not be stellar and you may not get first place award, but you're going to be okay and you will be successful. If you follow the process, if you just don't know what to do and you're stumped by what's going on, if you follow our process through, because they're proven processes, you'll be okay. Now, you may not get first place, but you'll be successful, and the thing about that is if you know the processes and have used them time and time again, they become second nature. And then when problems do arise, you're more highly successful when you go through them. And another thing I'd like to point out that I think probably might be a problem in IT. I know it's a problem in the construction business. People get stumped by adversity. You learn more on a project that is on fire and the end is coming and where everything's falling apart. You learn more in that process than you do on a project that goes smoothly. Now, I say this in the fact that I want to tie it back to, don't be scared of issues. Don't be scared of adversity. Use them as learning opportunities. Don't let them overwhelm you. But a lot of times people get overwhelmed by the problem rather than learning from the issue and doing better the next time. Because, again, it becomes second nature. When those problems arise, then you already have experience handling them and you've learned from your situation in your past and applied it to your future. So, yes, I would agree. If you follow those processes, either being an Eagle Scout, I'm sure IT, I know in the construction business, if you follow those processes, you will get to where you want to go.
I would not have guessed that we would be able to spend a solid hour talking about scouting on an IT podcast. Never would have guessed that.
I have notes over here we're not even going to make it to, so I'm sure there'll be other sessions with different guests. James, we'd love to have you back sometime.
Sure. I enjoyed it.
We'll definitely have to do that. Don't want our listeners falling asleep on us, though, so we do want to mind the clock a little bit. Just a reminder for listeners out there, if you are enjoying any of the conversation on the Rebel Devs podcast, keep in mind that you can shout out to us on social media using hashtag RebelDevs. And if you need some assistance in the Veeam world, don't forget to reach out to Different Dev, mention the podcast, get 5% off an optimization review, or get some discounted professional services, whatever works for you. Reach out, let them give you a hand. Jonah, we've talked about Veeam, we've talked about scouting, we've talked about the relationship between those and IT. With life as we have seen it over the past few years, what are you thinking as far as attendance rate for the upcoming VeeamOn Conference?
I don't know the exact numbers, but from what I heard this morning, Veeam is getting very close to shutting off registration for the in-person passes because they're approaching capacity at the Fontainebleau. So I think we're going to see a larger turnout than we did in Vegas last year, which was unfortunately, my understanding, pretty small just because so many people were still just returning to travel.
Yeah, that was something that I remember Tom and I talking about when we were out in Vegas. It's just how unimpressive the attendance was last year. And, blame that on Vegas, blame that on whatever you want. I just think it's, with everything that's been going on in the world, all the challenges we've been facing as humans, not as IT people, I'm hoping y'all see some better attendance numbers next week. Jonah, and Tom, if you know, what do you think chances of we might see a 12A release related to VeeamOn?
Oh, I don't know. We shall see. I'm not making comment because I know often they give us kind of, what do they do, Jonah? Like red, yellow, green content, and I'd have to sift through my notes to know what we're allowed to see or say or not. But
Something
maybe
is
I'll
always
put
in the works with Veeam, and even if they haven't told us, even if they have, I'm sure there will be some sort of announcement of some stuff at VeeamOn that we can discuss more on a future episode when we have the green light.
Yeah, but I'll say this, Vince. I mean, I was around IVMCE'd on 9.5.4, and I must say that from version 9 of Veeam, I heard this rumor of something called Veeam 10. I swear it had to be like 3 years. Like they could not get this product across the line. It was just like bloatware. It just kept adding more and more and delaying, and finally Veeam 10 dropped. And I think there was a fundamental shift to do more sprint based. So we saw 10, we saw 10A, 10B, we saw 11, we saw a couple patches, 12 dropped. I'm sure we're going to see it. And when we talk about 12A, I would imagine that when this comes to fruition, it's not going to be so much like patch fixes, but maybe some light feature releases in there. So it's exciting. I hear rumors that things will be announced down there. I don't know if it was around 12A or not, though.
Well, Jonah, keep an eye out for me. We'll have to circle, and the group here will have to circle back and discuss whatever's announced at VeeamOn during the next podcast episode. I think through our show notes, most listeners will be able to figure out how to interact with Jonah and Tom and myself if they choose to. James, if anybody listened to this and they want to reach out to you, ask you a question, whatever, how would you suggest that they do so? You want to have call Tom and ring Tom's phone off the hook until they get him?
I can give you my email.
Go ahead with that, sir.
It's TexasCarpenter, all spelled out as one word, at AOL.com. Yes, I'm really old tech, but hey, it's a free account and I've had it for 30 years.
As long as you don't use the CD still, I think you're okay.
No, I don't. I use the free portion.
Or the dial-up modem minutes.
Yeah.
That's a flashback. All right,
and
folks.
hey, since those of us at VeeamOn, I'm going to be at booth B16. I'll be there if you want to say, hey, Jonah, you're out there with Cyber Fortress. You guys are right outside the main gathering area. Any memory? Look at that word. Any memory of what booth number you're at? I mean, you're right outside the door because you're the cool kid.
Yeah, I mean, I swear I saw it the other day. I want to say it's B3, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, well, you're not a bronze package person like I am. I think you're a silver partner, so you might have a different code. But right outside that main door there, go see my friends at Cyber Fortress. They have some smart cookies over there. We recommend a lot of business up to their cloud. They do a great job, and I know they reciprocate down to us. So it's a great symbiotic sort of relationship, which I didn't know that was a word until Star Wars. So there you go. Sprinkle in some Star Wars, bring together the Rebel devs. Boom, there we go. Like, I'll shut up now, Vince. Bring us home.
And there you have it, folks. Until next time.
Whether you're a seasoned solutionist or just starting out, the Rebel Devs podcast is a must listen. So join us. Comment, share, and subscribe. Be part of the Rebel Devs.